Okay, hello. So Trenton Bennett says, thanks for doing this, Lindsay, and hello from Tampa, Florida.
Hello. Tampa's actually where I was born and went to school, so nice to have somebody from Tampa here.
Awesome. Great. All right. So we are recording and I will post this on the Wide Audiobook YouTube channel when we are finished. And so I would like to, so first of all, my name is Rebecca Hefner. I'm the admin of the Marketing Audiobooks Wide Group, and we are so excited to have Lindsay Senior with us today. She is with Authors Republic. So hello, Lindsay. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to do, so Lindsay's prepared a little presentation for us just to let us know about Authors Republic and just to answer some initial questions. And then you all sent in some questions. So after she does her presentation, we will ask those questions. And if you have questions while the presentation is going on, just pop them in the chat and we will do our best to get them answered. All right,
Okay.
so Lindsay, I am going to make you a host. I hope that this works. Oops. Hold on. There we
All
go.
right.
Okay, so hopefully that worked.
Yes. All
Great.
right. Okay. Are you able to see my?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So I think Rebecca covered the introductions very well. So thank you for that, and I'm really happy to be here with you all. So thanks for joining. Like she said, I'm Lindsay, and I lead marketing and acquisitions at Authors Republic. At Authors Republic, we specialize in wide audiobook distribution for self-published authors and indie publishers. And that's how we got our start 10 years ago or so, was in the distribution space for audiobooks. We've since launched tools for audiobook production, as well as some marketing support and resources. That includes promotional opportunities with retail and library partners, promo codes, sometimes called redemption codes, and then there's some other resources as well. So to get started, just a quick look at what we'll talk about today. Just a high level look at the global audiobook market, and then we'll dive into some more specific aspects of self-publishing your audiobook. Some of these specific details may already be very familiar to some of you, but it's worth taking a look at, since there's always different options to consider, and it might spark some questions as well. And like Rebecca said, we'll have Q&A at the end. So the point of this graphic is really to show the continued growth of the audiobook market. It's experiencing it now. It's projected to continue to experience it. And just a note, there's the term CAGR a couple of times on this graphic. That's simply the compound annual growth rate, and that's an annual growth rate on an investment over a period longer than a year. It's really just showing that there's significant growth in this market. So obviously this graphic is showing everything, audiobook sales as a whole, and self-published titles make up just a portion of these very, very big numbers. But per the Audiobook Publisher or Audio Publishers Association's latest sales report, audio revenue continues to grow year over year while other formats decline. And that's for self-published as well as traditional published audiobooks. We see that fiction and sci-fi fantasy continue to have very high sales, but other genres, as listed here, are continuing to grow. So romance, history, health and wellness, all of that. We also see, in addition to that list, children's audiobook titles are growing in the market as the next generation of readers, listeners have streaming audiobooks and audiobook players at their fingertips. And another note on the audiobooks is that even with this growth, the competition in the audio world is still not as stiff as the competition in ebook, for example. Obviously, this is a very tough industry, no matter what format your title is in. But due to the price of entry required for audiobooks, there's simply not as many audiobooks out there as there are ebooks or even print books. So your title may find that it's more favorable in app algorithms in the audio format, and it also ties into the larger idea of being wide. So while we talked about wide distribution a little bit, It also applies to being wide as a format. So having an audiobook, an ebook, print, it just gives your readers, your listeners many options to find your work, and it also diversifies your own income streams. So what does the process look like to create an audiobook? And I tend to say it's a choose your own adventure. And like any good choose your own adventure, there are a lot of decision points along the way. And ultimately, these decisions are going to be based on what option works best for you. Usually, that means what works best in terms of your budget and your goals. Some people, their goal with an audiobook is accessibility. They just want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to read and listen to their book. Others are really trying to drive sales. Those are just a couple of examples of potential goals for your audiobook. And then, of course, over time, you'll need to reevaluate your budget and your goals because they will likely change as you learn more about audiobooks or as you see results coming in. But some high level decisions that you're likely going to need to make during your audiobook journey are: will you use a traditional audiobook publisher or take on the risk of self publishing? And if you self publish, which production option? And then where to distribute? And once that's done, what about marketing? So it can all start to feel pretty overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. So we can dig into each of these a bit more, and we can start with that initial decision, traditional publisher versus self-publishing. So even though Authors Republic is a self-publishing platform, we are not a publisher. We only help authors and indie publishers get their audiobooks to retail platforms, library platforms as a distribution aggregator. There are still very good reasons to use a traditional audiobook publisher should you have the opportunity. One of the major hurdles for most indie authors is when it comes to the upfront cost of producing an audiobook. It's not cheap, even with new tools and AI entering the market. To create a high quality audiobook, it still is a level that you're going to have to invest to create this audiobook. And frankly, you don't want to cut corners when it comes to production for many reasons. This goes for traditional publishing as well as self-publishing. But some big reasons you wouldn't want to just take a cheap option with an audiobook, or, what may seem like the easiest option, is it could end up costing you more in the long run. There are very specific audio and technical specs that are required for an audiobook to be accepted by retailers. So if your audiobook doesn't meet those specs, you will spend more time and money to correct your files to get them in shape to be distributed. And then also, if an audiobook does not sound good, no one's going to listen to it. It won't get reviews, it won't get sales. If it does get reviews, they'll probably be poor. So to make the most of your investment, you really want to make sure that your audiobook meets specs and sounds really, really great. And if you are able to invest in the production of your audiobook at a high quality, then self-publishing is an excellent option because you take home a higher royalty rate than you would with a traditional audiobook publisher. So for example, at Authors Republic, we pay out 80% of the earned royalties. So what we receive after our distribution partners take their cut, we pay out 80% to the author, and then we retain 20%. And traditional publishing would have a much lower royalty rate that they're paying out because they're obviously doing the work for production and marketing and so on. Plus, if you self-publish, you own the rights to your audiobook. You don't have a term where somebody else is in control and holds those rights. So let's say that self-publishing is the best option for you. You have the budget, you're okay with marketing. That can sometimes be a scary hurdle for authors, or you even love it, like Rebecca is a great person for that. Or you just like being in control, or a combination of all of that. So how do you produce your audiobook? You'll see I've listed 4 different ways here. These are by and large, I'd say, the most common methods to produce an audiobook today. So at the top, production studio, they will, of course, fully manage your audiobook. You pay them an upfront fee. They then cast a narrator from their network of professionals and handle the recording as well as post-production. So you will receive high quality audiobook files that are ready to sell at the end of that process. It is usually the most expensive option given it is a fully managed service, but you can count on getting really great quality files. Then there are also a couple of narrator marketplaces out there. Authors Republic, we have our own narrator marketplace. ACX is another example. But there's also places like Fiverr that aren't exclusive to audiobooks, where you can audition and hire narrators. There's typically a variety of per finished hour rates, which is the industry standard on these marketplaces. And you can find a narrator that suits your budget, and you take on the work of casting and doing the auditions. So once you cast your narrator, they should send you the final files once they're ready. They should be ready to upload for distribution. One note there, I have heard of some authors getting their final files and the narrator saying that they still need post-production. So just try to make sure that post-production will be completed up front, because that's typically something that is included by most narrators, and you don't really want to end up spending more money on that on the back end too, when you've already invested in the narration itself. So then there's also self-narrating, which is recording your own audiobook, and that can be a great option, but you do need to be laser focused on the audio specs and the technical requirements for audiobook distribution if selling your audiobook is your end goal. Because we tend to see most issues with the audio files that are submitted to us if somebody is not meeting spec. And that's again where you'll run into more time and money needed to correct those files. So there are resources that we have available on the Authors Republic site that lay out all these specific requirements. Wherever you plan on distributing, I would just ensure you're well aware of those specs and familiar with them before you actually begin the narration process. And then finally, there is digital voice, AI voice, which is obviously growing as a production type in audiobooks. So while I include it here, just want to note that Authors Republic does not accept digitally narrated audiobooks. And if you need help with your audiobook production, we have some different ways to help at Authors Republic. We have a list of production studios that we recommend, as well as resources for equipment or studio rentals if you did want to self-narrate. As I mentioned, we also have our own narrator marketplace. So when you create an Authors Republic account, which is free to do, you have access to our narrator roster, which has about 400 professional narrators, and you can browse samples and message them from within our app. You can have open or closed auditions with the narrators. Open means any narrator on our marketplace could see an audition for the audiobook. Closed means you would invite the narrators to audition for your audiobook. And you can even do a combination of the two, open and closed, if you wanted. But when you hire a narrator, your payment is sent to Authors Republic, which we then hold in escrow. And once you receive your final files from the narrator and you're happy with them, we pay that full amount to the narrator. So some other sites don't do that. You have to find your own way to pay the narrator. We hold that in escrow, so it's safe for both the author and the narrator. And we don't charge a fee to use this narrator marketplace. What you are paying all goes directly to the narrator with their per finished hour rate. And here's just a look at a couple of screens of our narrator marketplace to kind of give you an idea. You can see sort of a thumbnail of the narrator, their per finished hour rate. And then if you were to click in and view their profile, you can see some more specifics such as languages, accents, that sort of thing. Okay, so if you're ready to distribute your audiobook, meaning you have your final audiobook files, then in the audiobook world, to go wide, you really need an aggregator. And usually the aggregator, like Authors Republic, will take a percentage of royalties as payment. So like I said, we take 80% of the earned royalties, or I'm sorry, we take 20% of the earned royalties and pay authors out 80%. That's pretty standard. But there are some services that have different models. For example, could charge a monthly subscription fee. In the list of icons here, these are all the different retail and library platforms that we distribute to. It includes all the major retailers such as Amazon, Audible, Apple, as well as libraries, Hoopla, Overdrive, the Libby app. And there's also international sites, startups, niche genre-specific platforms. So having this wide network also allows us to offer a variety of marketing resources too within our platform. When you distribute through Authors Republic, we have a helpful workflow that walks you through every step of the process. And once your audiobook is up and selling, you'll receive the monthly payments from your earned royalties, and that's via PayPal or direct deposit if you have a US bank account. Here are some of the different distribution royalty models. So a lot of the platforms will utilize two or maybe more of these different royalty models. Pretty much every platform has a la carte as an offering. And that just means that when a listener pays for the audiobook, that retail price is what is what the royalties are then based off of. So for a library, that can be 2 to 3 times the retail price because the library will be having that title checked out and read by many different library patrons. But some retail platforms that use a la carte would be Apple, Amazon, Chirp, Google. Most retail platforms have an a la carte option. And library platforms would be Hoopla, Overdrive, Odillo, Biblioteca. Credit-based, there's several subscriptions. Credit-based is one of them, and that is when listeners have a subscription and receive tokens that can be applied to audiobooks. Once a listener uses that token for an audiobook, they can listen to the audiobook as many times as they would like, and the author receives the a la carte price, which royalties are then paid out that way. Some platforms that use credit-based as a model are Audible, audiobooks.com, Kobo, Libro.fm, and Barnes & Noble. Unlimited, another subscription. Listeners pay a monthly fee and can listen to as many audiobooks as they like. Authors are paid after a listener listens to 15% or more of their book. That's not as common. That's used by Click. Pool is another subscription. Listeners contribute to an overall revenue pool, and authors are paid out of this revenue pool based on the share of listens that they get from the listeners that are subscribed. That share is proportional to the listening minutes and is determined by the retail platform. Spotify and Storytel utilize a pool subscription model, for example. Cost per checkout is typically a library model, and that means it's very descriptive. When a library patron checks out an audiobook, there is then royalty that's paid to the author. So that's just very common across all libraries: Hoopla, Overdrive, Odillo, Biblioteca, Baker and Taylor. And then finally here, there's the combined portions model, another subscription service, and an author is paid a specific portion of their audio. When a specific portion of their audiobook is listened to, that is also determined by the audiobook platform, and that's utilized by, for example, Bookmate and Nextory. So for marketing tools, we have many marketing tools that are built into our platform when you distribute your audiobook through Authors Republic. So we really are a one-stop audiobook shop. One note with that is you do not have to produce your title using any resources or tools provided by Authors Republic to distribute with us. You can bring a fully completed audiobook and just go straight into distribution and access these marketing tools as well. So we have a long-standing relationship with a lot of our retail partners and library partners, and that gives us access to many promotional opportunities. From within your account, you can browse all the current promotional opportunities and nominate your title for any that fit your audiobook. And these promotions are on an ongoing rotating basis. They're typically seasonal, genre specific, location specific, and they tend to feature many sale opportunities. We can also fulfill bulk promo code requests through our platform. Our promo codes can be requested from audiobooks.com and or Spotify. You just have to have your title up on that site to request promo codes from that site. We regularly send a new releases email out to our distribution partners to make sure they're aware of all the exciting new titles that we have coming out. And that gives their editorial team a heads up on anything they might want to feature in upcoming promotions on their own sites. We send out custom audiobook discount offers. This is via email and is usually 50% off your audiobook. It is a URL to a custom landing page for your audiobook, and you can share that URL with your listeners, with your subscribers, use it for promotions. That URL will only be given to anyone if you share it on your own. We do not share it on your behalf. It's just a marketing tool to use as you see fit. And then we send out a regular newsletter with marketing tips and tools and other industry news as well. We also have a blog with a lot of great marketing content that we continue to add to. And here's just a quick look at, in our app, what those promotional opportunities may look like. So here we have Kobo, Libro.fm, and Overdrive, but we really do have opportunities coming throughout the year from the vast majority of our retail and library partners. So with that, I think we can get to questions, but just one last quick plug. If you haven't yet, I'll pop the link to sign up for Authors Republic in the chat. It's free to create your account. We don't start making money until there are sales on your audiobook, so we want your audiobook to do well too. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to hello@authorsrepublic.com. So I don't know, Rebecca, if you'd like me to, oh,
I, okay, so I reclaimed the host. Hopefully that
okay.
works. Awesome. All right. Thank you, Lindsay. That was great. And that's like lots of information for everyone. So that's awesome. Um, okay, great. So you put that in the
Yeah, I don't know why it's showing up as a screenshot. Let me try a different way, but it shouldn't be a
yeah,
screenshot.
feel free to, yeah. All
Sorry.
right. Yeah, no worries. Okay, so so we while you do that, we had some people who sent in questions. So I'm going to ask those of you. But if any of our participants have questions as well, feel free to ask them in the chat, and we'll make sure that I get them asked to Lindsay as well. So I think so. I think I think the biggest question that most of our authors have is, and I'm just going to go through, I put these on a Google Docs. I'm just going to kind of go through them is, with Authors Republic, one of the most featured or two of the most featured requests are number one, the ability to be able to select which retailers the author distributes to in their own dashboard. And number two, the ability to set their own pricing and have their, set promo pricing and things like that. For individual distributors and everything from their own dashboard. So, can you talk about that and like talk about how authors currently change their prices, how they currently choose distribution with Authors Republic, and then are there any plans in the pipeline to allow authors to take control of that themselves in their own dashboards?
Yes. So in terms of opt-ins and opt-outs, we have three large buckets that authors can choose on their own. It used to always be when we set up our platform that most authors were interested in opting out of, if they were an opt out of anything, it was opting out of the ACX channels. So that is there. If somebody wants to opt out of Amazon, Audible, Apple, even, that's something that authors can already do. It's once you get into, and something that has been a newer thing that we've seen is opting out of specific wide channels. So for the time being, authors still do need to email into support before submitting their titles. If it is going to consistently be these same channels, we are able to apply opt-outs at the account level sometimes too. So that's worth checking in with support as well. But it is a commonly requested feature. It's something that we're working on. I don't have a timeline for if and when that will be rolled out yet, though. So for the time being, please continue if you have those specific opt-out requests to email support. And then for promotional pricing, that is another tool that we have in the works. I unfortunately don't have a timeline for that as either. So that's something that should be coming. In the meantime, if there's pricing changes that you'd like to make, it is something where you would need to email into our support team as well at info@authorsrepublic.com.
Okay, got it. So we have Marie here, who is not a fan of Audible, and that's okay. I know we have strong feelings about Audible in our group. So she does not want to distribute to Audible. So as you spoke about, you're able to, with Authors Republic, you're able to opt out of Audible if you would like. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one that authors can do on their own, is just fully opt out of those channels.
Okay. And then we have, so Trenton is a narrator, and he has an author who wants to engage with a company like Authors Republic. How do you have any suggestions for how narrators and authors can work with you all, can work with Authors Republic?
Yeah, so I would say the author should certainly create their own account. And then on the narrator side, we do have where narrators can also sign up and they can submit to be featured on our narrator marketplace. So if that is the way that you'd like to engage, that's something that you're able to go to our site, sign up, follow the steps. There's a sample that needs to be read, some information that needs to be provided in your account, and then you can be put into consideration. Our operations team would review all of your information, obviously, before it goes up in the narrator marketplace, verify that you have a example that sounds good. You have all the information where we can verify you are a real person, that sort of thing. And then you could also be part of the marketplace. If you're really just interested in making sure your author's audiobook gets up on our site, you don't probably need to go through that. I think it might make more sense for you and your author to just work together from the author's account to get that book into distribution.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Trenton says thank you. Okay, so we had another question, which was I thought was a really good question about will Authors Republic ever be enabling the option to opt in or out of certain territories? So some authors only have North American rights to their audiobooks, but have sold the foreign rights. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that actually is one that if you were with us already, you can do now. You can choose where your rights are already. So let me just want to see if I can easily share my screen to show you where that is in case you are.
Oh, okay. I think I have to give you back.
Okay, if not, that's no problem.
No, I
Yeah,
don't
okay.
think I can do it. Hold on one second. Let me here we go.
All right. So if you are in your Authors Republic account, this is you've created an audiobook project. We're past get started now. We're on the metadata tab. Right here for sales rights, this has world rights selected. I don't know if you can see the drop down on my shared
Yes.
screen. Okay, but you can choose where your sales rights should be. So it could be just North America, for example.
Okay, that's great. All right, so that's good. Perfect. Okay. Okay, what else? What other, sorry, I'm just going through our list here. Oh, so
No,
we had someone who asked, would you recommend redoing parts of an audiobook? You know, I guess this person recorded the audiobook or had their narrator record the audiobook and, they're getting some negative feedback. And I guess maybe if you could, that would go into a larger question that maybe you could answer. Like if you redo your files or anything, how easy is it to upload new files to Authors Republic?
yeah, that is a great question. And we do see that that's not an uncommon request for whatever reason. You request to have your files put back in editing. Obviously, there's so many specs. We want to be really careful and make sure that we're on top of when a file is edited and needs to be pushed back out to our retail partners, library partners. So once your file is in editing, then you can make changes to your project, submit it again, and it would be the same thing where it takes a period of time to, those changes would take a period of time to go back out to all the partners. Your book's not taken down; it's still there in the state that it was in, but that update will take a couple of days to a few weeks. If it's an Audible or Amazon channel, it could take longer than a few weeks to go back out and then be updated.
Okay. And then I know we've had some questions about this in the group, so I'll ask you while I have you here. And so I know because I know with some of the other aggregators, like for example, Chirp changed how they reported. So they used to report, you used to be able to see things show up, you know, in real time, um, in some of the aggregators' dashboards. But now they will just report monthly and things like that. So for Authors Republic, how do you all get sales reports to your authors? Like, is it monthly? And then how many days after the sales are reported do people pay out? Is it 40? Do you pay out? Is it 45 days, 30 days, 60 days? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we will pay out when we receive. So it can also depend on, since we have so many partners, the retail partner and the library partner, their payout schedule. For example, some are quarterly, some report 2 months after a sale on their side. So there's not consistency on the platform side when sales are received. But we will pay out once the payment is received, we will pay out within the month. And it is a monthly payment that goes out to authors. They will see from the royalty payments, because we're paying out based on the earned royalties, they will see, what their sales are for what we've received in that month. We are updating our dashboard right now, our reporting dashboard with royalties. So that's an ongoing process where users are going to start to see more information. We're trying to include sort of sales that we have received. They're not going to be official yet because they're not the payout, but as we receive these reports from our partners, not having the authors have to wait for that payment to come out to them monthly, but to see preliminary what they should be expecting. But it is where we're paying out monthly, and what the authors are seeing is based on what we are receiving for that month leading up to it, the prior month, in terms of the payment. The time frames, though, from the partners themselves are not always consistent. So that's just something that
Right.
the yeah.
I think we all as authors we know we're used to that at this
Okay.
point.
Yeah.
So, and there's nothing that aggregators can really do about that. It's like you guys are also subject to the same reporting schedule that we're subject to. So, okay, so that makes sense. So yeah, Trenton asked, how does one work with an aggregator? I mean, I think that so Trenton's the narrator. I mean, I think this is kind of along the same lines, Trenton, is that so an aggregator would be so Authors Republic is an aggregator, Findaway Voices is an aggregator, Publish Drive. These are all aggregators. These are all sort of so the author writes the book, or so the narrator narrates the book, the author writes the book, and then in order for the author to get their audiobook on the bazillion platforms that we need as white authors, then we go through an aggregator like Authors Republic. So, again, Lindsay, I think to your question or to your answer about narrators working directly with Authors Republic, it depends on sort of your capacity of how you're, with how you
Yeah.
work there. So,
It's like there's some agreements too where the narrator is going to be the one that's uploading the files. It depends. A narrator could set up an author account, something where if you are a narrator, it just depends on your goals. If you're trying to distribute an audiobook, then you're an author in our system. If you're trying to join our narrator marketplace, you are a narrator. So I think that's kind of where we draw the lines, but there's nothing where if you are a narrator helping an author distribute a title, you could sign up as an author and go through that workflow if that's the agreement you have.
yes. Okay, got it. Okay, and then we had a question about Substack and Medium as marketing platforms, and Lindsay and I spoke about this a little bit before the webinar. So I'll actually answer that question because I think so. The thing that I think Lindsay has made pretty clear is that although Authors Republic, I love that sheet that you guys have on your website that shows the promotional opportunities. So while various aggregators, you offer these you let everyone know what the promotional opportunities are. It's actually still the author's job to do the marketing, which authors love marketing. How fun, right? So I'll answer that as an author who does marketing. So I use Substack quite often now. I started using it at the end of 2024, and I find it a great platform for marketing. I haven't used it to replace my author newsletter. I still have both. I actually see them as having two very different functions. So my author newsletter is the newsletter I build. I actually consider that people who have probably at least read one of my books and they've signed up at the end of my books for a bonus scene or what have you, and that's how they got on my newsletter. So I consider them kind of warm leads, like warm readers. That's who I'm going to email when I have a sale or when I have a new release or what have you. On my Substack, I'm using that differently because I'm looking at that as a cold audience, as an audience that is not, they're not my subscribers yet. They're not people who have probably heard of my books yet. So I see them as two different types of marketing tools. And I think both are very important. That's why I still have both. But I do think Substack is a great marketing tool. I have seen really great growth on Substack and a lot of authors are there now. So I personally would recommend it. So not only do I have my author Substack there, but I also have my, Indie Audiobook Deals, which is the marketing arm that I run for that does wide audiobook promotions. I have a Substack for that. And I've seen exponential growth with that Substack and very good growth with my own author Substack. So I highly recommend that. As far as Medium, I tried Medium out. I didn't love it. They put everything behind a paywall. So you have to kind of like pay into their ecosystem to see what everybody writes. And so to me, that's not really, I don't think that's, I think that creates a barrier between you and your readers if you're trying to reach them. So I was not a huge fan of that. So that's just my personal answer and my personal experience from both of those. And so I think it was Marie who asked that question. I can't remember, but either way, that's my answer. I don't know, Lindsay, if you have anything you want to add to that.
No, I actually have not talked with many authors about those two channels for marketing. It's not one I've heard of very often, so that I don't have anything that's a great answer.
Yeah, got it. Yeah. I mean, Substack is definitely, I think that's the one, I think that's the one that's going to continue to keep growing and keep That's kind of like the new, it's like social media slash blog slash newsletter slash podcast. Like you could do so many things on there. So, but yeah, so keep an eye out on that one. Maybe Authors Republic, but you guys should start a Substack. You probably find, that's what I'm doing. I'm finding new people on there.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go. All right. What other questions? All right. So let me just look through and make sure we touched on everything. Okay, so we talked about the promo tools and the pricing, distribution, and we talked about the rights. Okay. So I think, yeah, so I think we have all of the questions. If anyone else has any questions while in the chat, feel free to pop them in while you're here. And then can you just talk to us about, so for Authors Republic, if someone wants to set up an author account and start uploading, how long does it usually take from when you upload an audiobook? And I know it's different for every retailer. So what do you see as far as like, once you hit publish and you send it to Authors Republic and it's ready to go, how long do you start, does it take until you start seeing the audiobooks on the different retailers?
Yeah, it's a great question. So once you submit your audiobook for distribution, it goes through our ingest team on the operations side. So they are then checking all of the files as well and making sure they meet spec, making sure that everything sounds good. Also, in the audiobook space, just checking for potential signs of fraud or anything like that as well. They're really quick with that. That's not a delay. Then it gets pushed out to all of our retail and library platforms, assuming, if you've opted out of any, it wouldn't go to them. And it can take anywhere from 3 days to a few weeks. Again, Audible and Amazon right now for us, it's taking a few weeks. They're usually the longest in terms of when it will be up on their site, but it can be very quick for other platforms. It can depend. Usually the delays when things are being pushed out is it can depend on if our retail partner has their own backup, if there's an issue with the files, and maybe they get sent back to us and we can pass on to you that there's some sort of adjustments that need to be made. But it's usually within a few days, a few weeks.
Okay. But I know that with some aggregators, with Kobo Plus specifically, so some aggregators so you just check Kobo as a distributor and that automatically opts every audiobook published into Kobo Plus. Does it work that way with Authors Republic as well?
I need to double check that. We have so many different programs that like that I don't want to speak out of turn on Kobo Plus. So let me double check with our ops team. I don't remember specifically with them, and then I can get back to you on what the answer is. We do not automatically opt into all programs like that, but there are some that we do. So let me give you an answer on that following this.
Okay, got it. And then I know some people, I've just had some questions personally from other authors that I know. So maybe you could talk a little bit about this of some people left Findaway, but they still want to publish through Spotify. So you all still distribute to Spotify, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have our own agreement with Spotify that's not the same as the Findaway Voices agreement since we're not Findaway Voices users. We have a direct engagement with Spotify.
Okay. So for anyone who, is moving away from Findaway or has moved away from Findaway, but still wants to publish to Spotify, then you can still get there through Authors Republic. So there you go.
And yeah, under the terms that you see in your distribution agreement with Authors Republic.
Okay, so I think so off the top of my head, those are most of the questions that I get. I think you've done a really good job answering them. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. And if anything else comes up, let me know. You can reach us again at hello@authorsrepublic.com. And Rebecca also knows how to get in touch with me. So
Yes.
she can get that.
Awesome. Okay, great. So Trenton says thank you. This was very helpful. Thanks, Trenton. And thanks to everybody. We've got Hugh, Marie. Marie says thank you. Lindsay, everyone really, appreciate you taking the time to come on here and answer our questions. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you all for joining. It was great to catch up with this group.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Have a great day. And remember, just check the Marketing Audiobooks Wide group for updates. I make them often. And again, thanks, Lindsay. I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.